This week's episode is sponsored by Wellgo USA's new psychological horror, The Beast Within, in theaters everywhere on July 26th. After strange events make her question her family's isolated life on a fortified compound deep in the English wilds, 10-year-old Willow secretly follows her parents on one of their secret late-night treks into an ancient forest. Witnessing her father's terrifying transformation, she becomes ensnared by the dark ancestral secret they've been desperately hiding. Starring Kit Harington from Game of Thrones, and directed by Alexander J. Farrell, get ready to unleash the untamed in The Beast Within, in theaters everywhere on July 26th.
Slashers, huh? What's your favorite scary movie?
Not that one.
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking lion-headed flues. We're talking, what does he think this is? A game? And we're talking House on Haunted Hill 1999? And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're talking, where are you? I'll let you out! I'll get you out! I will!
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, God, poor Lili Taylor in
We're
this.
talking about, it's about family!
We're talking about, I haven't introduced you yet.
Oh, well, that's how mad I am.
Fair points.
No, you know what? Fine, let's run with this. Everyone,
Do it.
I'm just going to introduce our guests who are not waiting in the wings. They are the hosts of Kill by Kill, a podcast in which they unpack all the gory details of horror cinema's least discussed topic, the characters. You may also remember them from our episodes on The Quiet, Witchboard, Batman and Robin, and Murder by Numbers. Please welcome back Patrick Hamilton and Gena Radcliffe.
Five-timer club, baby!
Oh my God. I think you've only been matched by my husband. I think that's the only groups that I've had every year.
As far as our verve for life or appearances on the show?
Yeah.
Both.
Both.
Yes.
But in case our listeners did not get what we were covering, everyone, we are not covering House on Haunted Hill because we've already done that. We are covering 1999's Jan de Bont's The Haunting.
Mm-hmm. And he should take full ownership of this. It should be Jan de Bont's, like John Carpenter's above the title. Because,
I mean,
own it.
It would have been Jan de Bont's Steven Spielberg's The Haunting.
Mm-hmm.
Right. As we discussed last week.
And let's table that discussion, but I want everyone to think, is there a way where this movie turns out better with Steven Spielberg actually directing it? You do not have to answer now. We will come back to it once you lay the table.
I have my answer already.
Yeah, go ahead, Gena. No, what is it? Is the answer no?
I mean, with a completely different script that actually reflected the book, it could have been great.
Yeah. Well, and that's the interesting thing too, right? Because they were so adamant about how, this is a readaptation of the novel because they can't remake the original film.
Right. They don't have the rights.
Yeah, exactly. So,
oh boy.
But actually, out of curiosity, has anyone here read the novel, The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson?
It's one of my favorite books.
Oh, okay, good. So y'all have way more insight on this than I do, at least, because I have not read this book.
Yeah, it's nothing like the movie, as it turns out.
And of course, folks, we should note that we also have an episode on the 1963 film, and in that episode, our guest, Robin Adams, is also a fan of the book, so thank God we're matched by people who know what the fuck they're talking about.
Absolutely. Well, okay, so I guess easy, softball question right off the bat, everyone. Did everyone see this in theaters in 1999?
Sure did.
Yeah.
I did, in the nation of Japan.
What?
Ooh. Because Patrick lived there for a while.
I did. I lived there for over 2 years on and off, in between LA and Orlando, helping open Universal Studios Japan in Osaka. And so there's a few movies that I happened to catch there and a few movies that I happened to catch here. Whereas, my disappointing Phantom Menace watch was in Universal Studios here in America.
Mm-hmm.
But this and A Tale of Two Sisters and Charlie's Angels, by far, this was the worst movie I saw when in Japan.
I mean, when you're competing with Charlie's Angels, that's like 5-star American cinema classic.
I can't tell you the amount of joy the opening 15 minutes of that movie gave me. I look upon that as a revelation. It came out when I needed it to. I needed that burst of joy at that specific moment. And I needed the dread that Tale of Two Sisters brought when I saw that.
Right.
No one needs 1999's The Haunting.
Oh man! So this is one of those movies that, because I'm gonna bring up my age. I was 10 when this came out, and like I remember seeing like the standees and the posters for this, but like I was hoping, praying this would be PG-13 so I could see it. So I saw this motherfucker twice in theaters, and I think I saw it a second time too because the trailer for Sleepy Hollow was attached to it, and I really wanted to see that again because I couldn't see that movie because it was rated R.
Right.
But no, it's like my dad took me to go see it because it was father-son bonding time, and then we made my mom and sister come see it with us the second time.
Ooh, because you hate them?
So again, 10-year-old Trace did like this movie. Like admittedly, I have not seen this since probably at least high school. I find things to like about it, but honestly, this movie's biggest crime is that it's just boring as fuck.
Well, it's also the fact that they could have basically made it its own movie with just a couple of tweaks. That's all they had to do. They could have removed it entirely from any connection to The Haunting of Hill House.
Right.
And they didn't. And it suffers greatly for it.
But part of its value, what got Spielberg to make de Bont trade him for Minority Report, which is what happens, is that he wants Minority Report because Tom Cruise has an empty slot in his schedule. And de Bont's like, why would I do that? And he's like, because I'm going to give you the rights to the remake of The Haunting of Hill House with this cast. Like, this is all set up for you. You know, I started working on this with, Stephen King. Like, there's a lot going on here for you, and I'm going to finance it. And we're going to build giant fucking sets. And de Bont, at this point, is so beaten about the head from Speed 2 that he's like, okay.
Well, so I guess then, Mike, here's another question then. Do you think Jan de Bont is the criminal in this movie? Or is he doing the best he can with the material he's working with?
I really think, for me, it comes down to the script. The script is atrocious.
Yeah.
And it asks a lot. Like, let's take Poltergeist, for example. One of those times where you're shown a lot of the haunting of that particular home, but it's always isolated to a closet, a bedroom, a clown, some chairs, the pool. It is very specific when it goes gonzo, and it's contained.
Yeah.
Here, every light fixture is a pair of eyes. Every wall can turn into
anything.
The Frighteners, but lesser than. How many curtains turned into ghost children in this fucking movie over the course of an hour and 51 minutes?
That ghost curtain was very much Steven Spielberg's idea because he thought it was really cool. It definitely was the point where I was watching this and I was like, why don't they just leave at a certain point? Because as soon as that door like literally turns into a fist and punches Lili Taylor away,
right?
And also, then I'm kind of like, okay, I get that these are kind of actually you're not even related to these children. Why do you care about these ghost children?
No, she is. She is. That's a big. No, she is. There's a big reveal at the end where she finds out from a ghostly encounter that she is related to the family somehow.
No. I know. Okay, no, because she is like the great-great-granddaughter of Hugh Crane's second wife. But okay.
But the kids are all just child laborers.
That's what I thought. The kids aren't his kids. He pulls them in from his textile factory and then tortures them and kills them.
But as we all know, you have to be related via DNA in order to release ghost children from a house. That's just science.
Yeah, this movie's real interested in science of any kind.
The thing that I cannot emphasize enough is that none of that happens in the book.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
None of that. A ghost doesn't call her to come to the house for this experiment. She just finds the ad. She just finds the ad in the paper.
Okay, wait. I'm sorry. So I remember even as a kid, like that was one thing I was like, that's really stupid that the house called her. But I love that. So House of Haunted Hill comes out like 3 months after this movie in October of 99. And
Right, but they would have been shooting probably around the same time.
yes, but I love it in this movie we have a house making phone calls, and in this in House of Haunted Hill we have a house hacking a computer system to change a guest list.
Honestly, there's so many similarities.
It's not as good as the lamp in Amityville 4 making phone calls and driving a car, but
I love
But
it.
at least that's plugged in. It's talking to the other electronics, Gena. It's plugged into the wall.
Well, but that's also a movie that I mean, granted, I haven't seen that one, but I'm assuming it's maybe embracing the camp factor of it all.
I would argue yes.
yeah, I would say so.
Whereas this is not.
No.
This movie is taking itself so seriously.
Very, very
so
serious.
deadly serious.
And I almost think it would be better if it was trying to be campy, because nothing
Yes.
about this movie is scary. And it's interesting, though, because I tweeted a photo of like the fucking cherubs when they're screaming when the house has eyes or whatever. And I remember even as a kid, I didn't think they were that scary, but I had so many replies from people that were like, oh my God, no, like 6-year-old me saw this and like these things scared the fuck out of me. So for children, this did work for a lot of people.
Well, that's the thing is, I think we're all a big old no on this movie, but if you think of it as a bit of gateway gothic horror, you know, for preteens, I think this could be scary and or at least, ooh, okay, I want to check out something else, you know, where does this journey take me?
True. I mean, there's an economy of scale problem here, though. And it really comes down to the concept that Spielberg is sold on a little bit when someone refers to the project as the Jurassic Park of haunted house movies. And he's like, yeah. You can do that. You can make this such a spectacular adventure in such an awe-inspiring setting and have these big encounters with ghosts. Wouldn't that make it scarier? And the answer is no. When
No.
someone gets punched with a giant fist made out of a door, I agree. A 6-year-old could find that scary, but no one else in the audience will.
I will say that some of the I was expecting all the CGI to look really bad in this movie, and some of it does.
Some of it looks real bad, some of it's fine.
I think some of it's fine. Yeah, I think the aforementioned like eyes in the wall, I think that actually looks quite good. If a little goofy, but I think it looks fine.
Whenever it takes ghost forms, it's a problem.
I think it's meant to be, for me at least, a little bit of a callback to Amityville.
Yes.
And how the windows in the house look kind of like eyes, the third floor windows.
Yeah.
But the problem for me is that, and you guys know this because you did the original Haunting, it's so stripped down
Mhm.
Yes.
where everything is suggested. The only thing that the audience gets is occasionally some thumping sounds.
Yeah.
That's it. Everything weighs on how the actors are reacting to things they think they are seeing and hearing. And the
Yeah.
book is the same way. And I don't understand why, you know, in adapting The Haunting of Hill House for an updated version, the idea is, let's make it real big. Let's make it an amusement park. Let's put a literal fucking carousel inside this house.
Oh, I love that
this,
set though.
And this weird, like hallway that's filled with water.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Just for no reason.
And like
Things that look
stacks
cool.
of books. And are
Yeah.
like, are the Dudleys maintaining that?
Yeah. Because that's stagnant water. That's going to fester. You're going to get bugs.
You
Yeah.
sure are?
What is the maintenance of this place? How do they possibly pay the Dudleys enough to do this?
Especially since they don't stay there at night. So they
Right.
have like
They got
presumably
to do it all in the day.
they have an 8-hour workday to get all this done.
Oh my God. No wonder they're so curmudgeon-y. They're overworked and underpaid.
But the sets are fucking gorgeous.
Yeah.
Like every new set you come into, it is 3 stories tall. It is ginormous. They filmed it in these empty airplane hangars here in my hometown now of Long Beach, California. And they are ginormous and gorgeous. And they're so big that the economy of scale of when a ghost happens is it has to be a story and a half.
Yeah.
And you're like, that doesn't make it scarier. It just presents a bigger problem for you to get past, especially when they leave all of these characters high and dry in terms of character.
Oh boy.
Yeah, they don't. And can I jump to what makes me the maddest about this? 'Cause
Sure.
it has to do with the ending.
Okay.
Where in the end, I guess she sacrifices her life
Yep.
so she could guide these ghost children to heaven. I guess, and you're supposed to get the impression that that's kind of a good
great.
thing.
She smiles on the way out.
She was so miserable in life and lonely and had nowhere to go because her asshole sister and brother-in-law were gonna, force her to sell the apartment.
Yep.
Cartoon villains.
But
Very much.
The book and the original movie ends like it's a tragedy.
Mhm.
Like, she does die, but it's left ambiguous as to whether she commits suicide or the house forces her to drive her car into a tree at the end.
Yeah.
It's like the house giving her one final fuck you because she tries to leave.
Well, it's also kind of, it's doing this stupid trope that I hate, specifically with female characters, where it's like, oh, you're miserable? Why don't we give you a bunch of kids? You can become a mother figure, and it makes you so happy, right? Your life is fulfilled.
It just guts the whole point of the story.
But she has
sure.
Heaven MapQuest, so she knows the way. Those kids don't know how to do MapQuest.
Yeah.
Gina?
Okay. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Trace, you need to tell us how this came about.
Yeah, so to figure out what happened here, we actually have to discuss Stephen King's 2002 miniseries Rose Red. So I'm pulling stuff from a couple different sources, but mainly Bad House, the making of Stephen King's Rose Red, which is a featurette on that film's DVD. The Haunting director Jan de Bont on swapping projects with Steven Spielberg and The State of Action for Collider from 2020. And Speed director Jan de Bont on reinventing The Haunting and trying to reinvent Godzilla for Polygon. And okay, I don't know what Jan de Bont was doing in 2020, but in November of 2020, he had a lot of interviews being done with him. So
Who's doing all the press?
He was picking up Skype calls by the sound of it.
I guess. Oh, that makes sense because we were all in pandemic.
We
mode.
were all in the pandemic, yeah.
Anyway, okay, so you see, Stephen King had always wanted to write a script about a haunted house, and he originally pitched the idea for what would become Rose Red to Steven Spielberg as a feature film in 1996. And everyone, some of this is going to be carryover from last week, since we covered Twister last week. Didn't plan it, but it's happening.
It's our Jan de Bont double bill.
Yes.
Jan de Bouquet.
His idea was to do a part loose remake of The Haunting and part something else. So it was going to be like this hybrid thing. And the project went into turnaround, or the use of outside assistance to resolve problems to prevent a film project from completing its development phase. Basically, to stop it from going into development hell. Right. So we had to bring in people to like mediate between Stephen King and Steven Spielberg.
Ooh.
But a complete script was written, but Spielberg demanded more thrills and action sequences, while King wanted more horror. So,
Tabitha, make it scary.
yeah, exactly. So, King and Spielberg mutually agreed to shelve the project after several years of work, and King eventually bought back the rights to the script and returned to it in, well, the year this came out, honestly, to make Rose Red, though that was delayed when he got hit by a car, so that came out in 2002 on ABC. I also remember liking Rose Red as a kid, but I have no idea how it holds up.
I feel like Patrick and Gena, you two have seen it, right?
Yeah, I don't remember very much of it.
I mean, I think that the characters are interesting, but there's always that ceiling when it comes to his ABC miniseries. And they just cannot rise above. And sometimes that lends itself to interesting filmmaking, as it did in The Stand.
Right.
And many can argue with it. And then, you know, the ambition rises when it comes to The Shining and Rose Red, but the budget really doesn't.
Yeah,
hampers
And
it. Yeah.
there's some interesting stuff and some, you know, fun characters, but it's probably one of those things that's just, it's really Stephen King tropey when it comes to that. It's a hodgepodge.
It's also 4.5 hours long.
Well, yeah, the typical miniseries.
But, okay, so after all that, Steven Spielberg looked into actually remaking The Haunting and doing a more faithful adaptation. Or, in this case, readapting Shirley Jackson's 1959 novel because they didn't have the rights to Robert Weiss's 1963 film, meaning they couldn't take a single sentence of dialogue from that movie or replicate any of its scenes. Although, I guess I'm assuming unless they're in the book too.
Right.
So back to Spielberg. Okay, so he was a Shirley Jackson fan and began working on his own remake of The Haunting finally in the summer of '98, along with producers Susan Arnold and Donna Arkoff Roth, with it being distributed by Spielberg's company DreamWorks Pictures, which was founded in '94, but their first film didn't come out until '97, so it's still a relatively new company at this point. But Spielberg was also going to direct The Haunting. So, again, we kind of talked about this again last week, and Patrick clued us in. But at this same time, Jan de Bont had been in pre-production on Minority Report, and had been for a while, by the way, like years working on this movie. He'd been developing the script with Michael Tolkien and first-time screenwriter David Self, the latter of whom Spielberg would make write The Haunting. Make write The Haunting. Like, it's like, make it, write it.
Do it for me.
Well, what happened here was that, yes, Tom Cruise suddenly became available for a particular period to do Minority Report, but in de Bont's words, there was no way he was going to be ready to direct it since he was in the post-production process of Twister. So then Spielberg said, yeah, hey, like, give me Minority Report, I'll give you The Haunting.
I'll flip you for it, and I'll come out the winner.
I'll also give you David Self, that writer you're working with, since you're comfortable with him, and he can write the screenplay. Okay, so the thing I find really funny about this, though, and again, Joe, this will tie back to our Eyes Wide Shut episode, Minority Report would get delayed for several years and wouldn't get released until 2002. And the original plan, though, was that they were going to film Minority Report after Mission Impossible 2, but as we all know, Mission Impossible 2 kept getting pushed back because Eyes Wide Shut kept going over schedule.
And Mission Impossible 2 gets pushed back so much that the villain doesn't end up playing Wolverine. It just has a domino effect over and over and over again that just reshuffles the fabric of pop culture for, weirdly enough, like a good decade.
Well, and so then Minority Report was delayed again so Spielberg could finish AI because that was something Stanley Kubrick was supposed to direct, but then he died. So, again, and y'all, we did Twister last week and Eyes Wide Shut 2 weeks ago, and we didn't plan this narrative in our programming.
And motherfucker Todd Field is in this movie too, so it's week 3 of Todd Field.
Yep. Still, though, Spielberg did visit the set of The Haunting often, and even directed a small scene in the film during its reshoot period when de Bont was unavailable. But again, this doesn't seem to be a Spielberg Hooper poltergeist situation.
No.
We can talk about Spielberg's, I'm going to say, disowning of this movie. I have seen things that said that Steven Spielberg was so disgusted with this movie that he removed his name from it. And I watched all fucking 6 minutes of these credits, and his name is not anywhere in there. But these are all rumors. I couldn't find a legit source of anything that confirmed these thoughts. I'm sure Spielberg probably wiped them out if it was true. But nevertheless.
Somebody take Stevie out, get him drunk, get the truth.
Now, for the cast, the studio initially wanted a star in the lead role of Eleanor, but de Bont, he doesn't like working with stars. He says when you have a star, you're always looking at the star and not the character, so he wanted someone more unknown. And at this time, Lili Taylor was primarily known for indie fare, so that was a good get for him. But even at the time, though, the rest of the cast wasn't, like,
they're not who they are now.
Well, Liam Neeson was the biggest name. So, like Catherine Zeta-Jones was really only known for The Mask of Zorro, although Entrapment came out 3 months before this movie.
And was huge.
Huge. Well, huge-ish. Owen Wilson's biggest role was probably Anaconda, but, he had done Wes Anderson's Bottle Rocket and had a small role in Armageddon.
He was bubbling.
Because I feel like Shanghai Noon is maybe when he really, rose to prominence, maybe? Yeah.
It's a confluence of things. Like, he's showing up and showing up and showing up.
Yeah.
But I don't know that any of those other roles are as Owen Wilson as this is, to the point where, shows up more often than any other word of dialogue.
Yeah. Although I will say, I like him in this movie because he's at least giving me something to laugh at.
I mean, he's the comic relief in a movie that maybe shouldn't have comic relief or needs more comic relief.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to say that as much as I enjoy Lili Taylor, she's
she's awful in this.
Okay.
She is completely lost at sea.
I wrote my Letterboxd review. I was like, good Lord, though, I'll help Lili Taylor because she is stuck just running around screaming, saying with the most asinine dialogue for most of this movie.
This poor woman. I shudder to think that there's a bunch of people who have only ever seen her in this and think that she's probably one of the worst actresses they've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
She's given, no direction on how to play this character. The character she's unwell.
Yeah.
In the book, and I think Julie something played her in the original movie.
Mm-hmm.
She's a little emotionally fragile.
Mm-hmm.
She's been in a toxic relationship with her, taking care of her sick mother. They do kind of established that a little bit. But see, this is all the things that they lose because they can't adapt the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, the conversation she has with a little girl about, you know, don't let them take your cup of stars. You know, even the Mike Flanagan version, which does, again, divert heavily from the source material.
But it's still a good miniseries, though.
And it captures the spirit of it, I think.
Yeah.
But, like, they don't know what they're doing with this character, if she's supposed to be kind of nuts, if she's, you know, they barely hint initially that she's imagining all this, but, like, she's just given no direction on how she should act, and she's not selling any of this dialogue.
No.
And the Crain stuff with the mother, we use it once and never go back into it. And I was like, wow, that's a real missed opportunity to not, like, you know, try to drive this character even more insane, but whatever. But that feels more like a studio thing, right? Where it's like, oh no, we have to have the audience relate to her. We want them to like her. If she's cuckoo bananas, that's not good.
That's a direct Spielberg note. When he was developing this with King said, you have to complicate these people so that the house can exploit their complications.
Right.
And Spielberg was like, no, not necessarily, because really in Jurassic Park, I have a bunch of characters who, when they're called upon, they become heroes. And I think you can do that in a haunted house horror.
Why do they need a hero in this?
I don't know.
There aren't any heroes in the story. They're just regular people.
Yeah.
And fucked up people at that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in the original story, they're kind of gaslighting each other a little
Oh,
bit.
yeah.
But, like, here it's just like, you know, these are all the good guys, and the house is the bad guy.
But it's not even the house. It's fucking Hugh Crain, this made-up bullshit
So-
character.
Wait. One last question before I continue. If we have the movie as it is, but it's not based on The Haunting, like it's not called The Haunting, it's not related to the original story at all. It's just its own quote-unquote original thing. Does this work better for you?
I mean, it still wouldn't be a good movie, but it would make me less mad that it exists.
Right.
I think it's fundamentally flawed, honestly.
Yeah.
From concept forward, there is a fundamental flaw in terms of what it wants to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into the details of it, but Gena's absolutely right, as she almost always is, that, you know, in the book, the fundamental idea is I'm going to prove whether or not the paranormal exists by having these people who have individual paranormal skills come into this house and see if they can unravel, you know, if this is real or not. And in here, no, these people just have like sleeping disorders and, you know, random personality defects. But other than that, they're more than willing to burst through doors and jump up stairwells to help one another.
And save ghost children.
Dude, like those. Oh, okay. All right. So, okay, this film has a budget of $80 million, which is, mind you, $10 million less than Twister.
Right.
8 to 10 million of that went to the sets, designed by Eugenio Zanetti, who had just won an art direction Oscar for the 1995 film Restoration. When building the sets, Zanetti looked at Turkish, Gothic, and Victorian architecture. But, okay, this is where I just find this fascinating. The most ambitious work orders went to the visual effects supervisor, who is none other than Phil Tippett. Listeners, if you don't know who that is, he's kind of the be-all, end-all when it comes to creature design, stop-motion animation, specifically stop-motion animation, and computerized character animations in films like Star Wars, RoboCop, and Jurassic Park. So, like, that was clearly the Spielberg get. But he had to map out the movie's gradual escalation of supernatural manifestations from, you know, buckling, breathing doors, to sheet-slithering ghosts of kids, to the effects-heavy finale. And so, you know, I think is his quote where he's like, you know, in everyone's mind, a dinosaur is the same, a twister is the same, like a dinosaur is a dinosaur, a twister is a twister, but ghostly events and creepiness are different. One person's idea is different than another's. So he kind of went carte blanche with what he could do here. Although I would argue maybe not enough. Yeah.
But you mentioned the walls breathing and doors, you know, which is kind of a thing that it's borrowing from the 63 original. But you can play that maybe once or twice. But the house breathing happens over
and over.
4 times.
And over. You wear out whatever creep factor you had when it escalates to the point where entire ceilings multiple times are going.
It's really a thing for me though, where whenever Eleanor and Lili Taylor is like running away from the ghost of Hugh Crain at the end, and it's like, isn't he just the house in general? So can't he just like drop a brick on her head?
Sure.
Well, he does try. We do try that. The bedposts are like kind of turning into like tentacles and pinning her to the bed. And this scene and her screaming, I can picture Jan de Bont just standing by, keep screaming, keep screaming, keep going. And
Do it for 10 more minutes.
And just dragging out this poor woman. It's like...
Needless to say, Lili Taylor's better horror role is in The Conjuring, obviously.
Yes.
She's done almost everything else I've seen her in, even before this movie.
Mm-hmm.
She's absolutely nailed it. And it's like her first day.
She's up Schitt's Creek without a paddle.
Yeah.
Which tells me that it's not her. That is the direction that she was provided. Right. So.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, de Bont also loved playing with the, at the time, very new Dolby Digital Surround EX, which was introduced earlier that summer with Star Wars Episode 1. So Liam Neeson was also on a stride here because he had Star Wars out at the same time as this. So I'm sure he probably was a big draw, maybe, for people. I don't know.
Right, yeah.
But de Bont sent sound designer Gary Rydstrom, who biggest credit for him at the time was Saving Private Ryan, to old wineries, condemned buildings, the echoey underground parking garage of Skywalker Ranch, as well as a coworker's home, because apparently that coworker had the worst plumbing in the world to the point where it did sound like ghosts moaning.
Okay.
Filming took place from November 30th of 98 and ended on April 9th of 99. Y'all, that is 3 months before the movie's supposed to hit theaters.
Jesus, they like not sleep
rushed
for 6 weeks straight to edit it?
So while it wasn't as troubled a production as that of Twister, it was troubled nonetheless because, like Twister, we had a cinematographer that left 1 week into filming.
Yeah.
So cinematographer Caleb Deschanel left over creative differences after a week. And
yes, if that name sounds familiar, that is Zoe's father.
That makes sense. But then they also, so they finished filming in April of 99. Reshoots took place in June of 1999, a month before the movie came out.
This is where the ghost baby thing enters the picture. The ghost baby thing wasn't a part of this until the reshoots.
No.
Did they think that they needed this to improve the movie?
Yeah. To make it scarier.
So one of the reshoots, I don't have an exact list. It was hard to figure out exactly what it was, but I know for a fact the studio demanded a new ending be shot. And I don't know what the original ending was or what they changed. Because if you're doing a reshoot a month before the movie comes out, it can't be that extensive, but maybe I'm wrong. But Lili Taylor said she shuffled from New York to LA 4 times when filming The Haunting, each time thinking she had put the character to rest, but didn't.
God. She hated it as much as we do.
Yeah. I think, this is one of her first big, major studio pictures, and I wonder if that kind of scared her away from it for a bit.
I can't imagine it didn't.
Yeah.
They did struggle a little bit with the MPAA, with de Bont saying that they flirted with an R rating. I'm pretty sure the idea here is Luke's decapitation.
Oh, yeah.
They had to trim that down a little bit and whatever. But the MPAA, it's interesting. Same with The Conjuring. They said it was too tense. It's too scary for a PG-13 rating. So they had to trim a couple of things. And noting, Jan de Bont blamed the post-Columbine cultural climate at the time, making them more strict on what they could and couldn't do. But then he also goes on to say, this is a movie that kids can go see. We wanted kids to be able to see this movie. And I was like, okay, well, kids and teens are very different, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're aiming for a thrill ride the whole family can enjoy, which is something that Jurassic Park does in spades. It is legitimately scary. I had to take my kid out of a Alamo Drafthouse screening of Jurassic Park, even though he'd seen it before, but he had not seen it on the big screen. And that Velociraptor attack in the kitchen absolutely terrified him because it's fucking scary. It has tension and release and has this very artful use of special effects that makes it feel like those creatures are going to eat some kids.
Well, that's why I think, though, and maybe Spielberg being a director here wouldn't have made the movie better, but I do think he would have been better at crafting scares, or at least tension and suspense, because this movie has none of that.
Yeah, no, that I agree with. Yeah, totally.
Can I say I don't? I mean, listen, there's absolutely thrilling and terrifying moments in Spielberg movies. That is without a doubt. But when we go back to Poltergeist, what elevates Poltergeist is not the Spielberg shots. It is not people staring up at a glowing orb out behind the camera. That is what solidifies us in identifying with the characters. What terrifies us are ultimately the sequences that you can only get with the true director of Poltergeist.
Oh boy,
as
here he
he's
goes.
the only person on the planet who can film someone's sanity snap, and what happens when they're just a bundle of nerves afterwards. That is what lingers with Poltergeist. When characters are so frightened by what they've been through and just experienced or are going through that they leave sanity behind, and they're all just like, well, part of my brain's operating and I'm just going to scream and try to get out of this. That is not a Spielberg specialty, my friends.
So what you're saying is Tobe Hooper should have directed this movie.
Yes. Let's just make that crystal clear because we don't want any angry idiots being like, I misheard this.
No. I will say for the record, we have a t-shirt in our t-shirt shop. Poltergeist is directed by Tobe Hooper with second AD work and special effect shots. Namely, I'm going to pull my face apart in a mirror. You can tell. That's directed by Steven Spielberg, but he can't say so because of DGA rules. He can't direct 2 movies in 1 year. And so therefore it all gets jumbled in the press, and then the LA Times fucks it up. And then Spielberg has to put a thing in the newspaper saying, I didn't direct this movie. Tobe Hooper did.
Well,
End of
nevertheless,
rant.
I think that's why, though, people were wondering if, like, Spielberg had a heavier hand in directing this film, but he did not. Again, he only directed one of these reshoot scenes that was taking place in the 3 months leading up to the release date. But
Right.
this film comes out July 23rd, 1999, the week after Eyes Wide Shut, and grossed $33.4 million during its opening weekend, ranking in first place ahead of newcomers Inspector Gadget, which placed second, and Drop Dead Gorgeous, which placed eighth.
Travesty.
Yeah,
Drop
well
Dead
said.
Gorgeous should have been number 1. What has a larger cultural tale? This or
Wow.
Drop Dead Gorgeous?
Yeah, well, for sure.
I mean, folks, we are talking about this for its 25th anniversary, but like, is anyone celebrating this movie?
Well, some people might be, but Drop Dead Gorgeous, I should also point out, was in half the number of screens as this movie was. Like, it was not a major studio film, but
No.
word of mouth clearly got around because The Haunting fell to 4th place in its second weekend, being beaten by newcomers Runaway Bride and Deep Blue Sea, as well as The Blair Witch Project, which finally expanded to a wide release after spending 2 weeks in 30 theaters nationwide. The Haunting would go on to gross total $91.4 million domestically against that $80 million budget, and $85.9 million internationally for a worldwide gross of $177.3 million. So it did a little bit more than double its budget, but I still think this is probably viewed as a disappointment.
It absolutely should
Now, I
be.
want you. Let's stop for a moment, and you just mentioned the Blair Witch Project.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So think of how effective that movie is,
Mm-hmm.
and how genuinely scary that movie is, and you don't see jack shit as far as what is terrifying them, what is driving them insane, what is getting that Hooper effect that Patrick was just talking about, where these people are losing their minds.
Yeah.
And you don't see anything. You know what you get? You get a production assistant banging around the tent. You get like someone stepping on a twig. That's what you get. And then you compare it to The Haunting, which it's like a carnival show.
Yeah.
Stuff is constantly happening, and yet one movie is genuinely terrifying, and the other one is just, well, I have a headache now.
Well, this movie is for the people that walked out of the Blair Witch Project going, that was really boring. Nothing happened.
Yeah. This is meant for large mainstream audiences.
And kids.
Yeah.
Which, again, I mean, look, I was 10 when I saw this and I didn't think it was boring, but I can't imagine like a 6-year-old being entertained by this movie. But maybe I'm wrong. Clearly I'm wrong, I guess. But nevertheless, critical reception was negative. We're looking at a 17% on Rotten Tomatoes with an average score of 3.7 out of 10, whereas Letterboxd users have awarded it, quote unquote, a 4.6 out of 10. And we got 5 Razzie nominations for this movie for Worst Picture, Worst Director for Jan de Bont, Worst Actress for Catherine Zeta-Jones, to which I call bullshit.
No.
No.
She's not great, but
She's trying.
She's also given like a nothing. The entire extent of her character is, oops, she's bisexual.
Just wait. Wait. We're also nominated for Worst Screenplay and Worst Screen Couple for Lili Taylor and Catherine Zeta-Jones, which, to that I say,
what?
There is no lesbianism in this movie between, I mean, like, there's a couple kisses, but it never reads as sexual or sensual or anything.
And again, I'm gonna be a broken record, but there's a lot more tension between these characters in the original movie and definitely in the book.
So this movie did lose all of those Razzie Awards to Wild Wild West, except for Worst Actress. Oh. Guess who won Worst Actress this year?
Would that have been? I feel like that was Demi. That was a Demi Moore year.
No, I'll give you a clue. It's a movie we've already mentioned.
Oh, it was what's her face from Blair Witch?
Heather Donahue from Blair Witch Project.
Are you kidding me?
Unbelievably.
Oh my God! Burn that institution to the ground.
But here's the thing. Once again, I'm just going to say it. I said this last week when we were talking about the Razzies. I'm just going to say it again. We fucking hate women.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's all they got.
Because we learned that Jamie Gertz was nominated for Worst Supporting Actress for Twister, and she's arguably one of the better parts of that movie.
Yes.
She's like the voice of sanity in that movie.
Yes!
Yeah. But people fucking hate her.
So, this is the end of my spiel, but I will say, there was a 2020 interview with Polygon, with de Bont, and he had this to say about the reception, because Polygon was saying, more people really like this movie now, and... Okay.
Cite your source, Polygon.
De Bont's response to this, and I quote, "People were thinking I was going to do a remake of the old one, which was a really good movie, but that was never the plan. So the expectations were much more directed toward the older version and not toward a different interpretation of Jackson's story. So that was the really difficult thing to deal with. I was so surprised by it, that they took it so literally. If you see this as a remake, you have to tell the same story, and obviously that wasn't the case. That wasn't very well presented in publicity. But now, in several countries where I've talked about movies and with film students who didn't have the knowledge that it had to be the same as the old one, they saw it as a different movie. So they didn't have that comparison level. And if you read general reactions now, they're much higher than when the movie came out, which is kind of nice to see. And my thing with this is he's only blaming the negative reception on the fact that people were comparing it to the original film.
Which is no.
That's why I asked that question earlier. Like, does this work if you don't compare it to the original film? Does it work as a standalone film? And I think the general consensus between all of us is no, it doesn't.
No.
Well, also, he's on the record as saying, okay, if you're comparing it to the 63 Robert Weiss film, it doesn't look good. And we're all in agreement about that. Yes, he's factually true there. But he's also suggesting that this is an okay adaptation of the book, and that is just blatantly false.
No, no.
It takes no advantage of the advance of time in terms of the character of Theo. She's not returned to her status that she's in the book. And while the book is very subtle in terms of her being bisexual and definitely connecting with the Eleanor character, this movie takes no advantage of it whatsoever. No. It just, it's uncommented on beyond her maybe we don't even know if she's prodding Eleanor when she says boyfriend, girlfriend. That's it. It's meant to shock the straights.
But I also think that, I mean, and look, I like quite a few of Jan de Bont's films, but subtlety is not what he does. Not a strong
suit. No. To briefly get back to Twister, although you covered it last week, I must mention this because I've said this in the past, and maybe your audience has never heard this particular story, so I'll tell it fast. In 1996, I saw the studio preview for Twister. I was seated behind somebody that I could not see around. That is because Michael Crichton was 6'15".
Yeah.
And so I had to peer around his wife, who I recognized from the Boogans. I had never seen Michael Crichton in real life, no matter how big a Looker fan I was. And just for the audience at home, when Jamie Gertz says, we have cows, there's more cows, I'm, like the rest of the audience around us, laughing in joy. We're having a grand old time. And Michael Crichton gets slowly furious with me in particular for enjoying the movie he wrote and produced. So if you've never had Michael Crichton pissed off at you, That is a fucking reality. And I felt like, I was barely 6 foot at the time. I would have had to climb a ladder to touch his nose.
Well, I think part of the reason he got so angry at that is that was likely a Joss Whedon rewrite of his script. So,
yeah, because Joss Whedon was brought in to tinker with that script for most of its production process.
He was delighted. I'm sure he enjoyed the fucking check he got, though.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
But, okay, Joe, let's talk about what happens in this movie.
All right. So we open with a bunch of aerial shots of Hill House. This is actually a house over in England. This is not part of the studio sets.
I will say, I don't think this shot is entirely necessary. I know it's like to introduce the house like super early, but like the way we transition from this to Nell fight, like, then we get the title card and then boom, Nell fighting with his sister. I was like, ugh, like, yeah, okay, fine.
Like, don't you want to save the opening when Nell drives up so we get to see it as she experiences it?
That might be a good idea. And I actually do like the way that shot, too, when she's looking at it through the gate, but whatever.
Yeah, so yes, we then transition over to an apartment complex in a city, and we learn that following her mother's death, Eleanor, aka Nell, is being evicted from the space by her sister Jane, who... Virginia Madsen?
Yeah, what is she even doing in this?
Oh, a thankless role. It's like you had Virginia fucking Madsen and you gave her this.
It's so funny because the guy that plays her husband is like the main bad guy from that TV show Devious Maids that Mark Cherry did after Desperate Housewives.
Yes, this is Tom Irwin.
Yes, but like, okay, these characters, like, they're meant to be horrible people, but oh my God, like...
They're caricatures.
Nell takes care of her mother for apparently her entire life, mind you. I think she says that at some point. And these people won't even leave her the fucking apartment? Like, what is this?
Yeah, I love the problem. I was like, oh, we'll take the cost of the car out of your out of the your inheritance. Yes. Oh, will you?
All $53 of that AMC Gremlin? I'm sure that's really going to put her back.
The patronizing, we need someone to help cooking and cleaning around the house. Do you want to come be our maid?
And look after our shitty fucking child. I do love that we get the satisfaction of Nell just saying, get out.
Oh, yeah. Because we'll never see these people again.
No. And we don't in the original film either, right? So, I mean, part of this is that we're just table setting who Nell is so that we understand why she might not want to leave the house. That works in the 63 version because she has nothing to come back to. Here, it's just like, okay, so she's in a shitty situation, but like, she has every reason to live now.
But I will say this is probably the best Lili Taylor is in this movie and the most, like, empathetic she is in this movie.
Well, it's the one piece of screenwriting that works because Eleanor is in a very correct moral place. You feel for her in that situation, no matter how, unsubtle it is. It's still like, why would you do this to what appears to be a very nice person? You're immediately on her side.
Yeah. So Nell, we've got already the ghostly-esque imagery where there seems to be a breeze that draws her into her dead mother's bedroom.
Oh my God.
This is the stupidest thing. The house hacking into a computer in House on Haunted Hill works because that movie embraces camp.
It's stupid, and the movie knows it.
Yes, because it's a Dark Castle film. This house calling Eleanor is so stupid.
So dumb.
Boo, ringy dingy dingy.
It's basically the idea is that the house calls her, say, hey, open your newspaper. There's an ad in there that might interest you.
Well, but it's also because it's supposed to be Liam Neeson on the other line, so it also like
it's impersonating his voice.
Yes.
Yeah, it learned his voice.
Which again, to this I say, this house is too. It's an issue where the house is too overpowered.
Well, I mean, we're going to talk about it, but there's no rules or logic in the way that anything behaves once they get to the house, so there's no stakes as a result, because it doesn't make any sense.
I think that's the only reason we kill Owen Wilson in this movie, is to, like, provide some kind of last-minute stakes, but it doesn't work.
But I do love the idea of this house calling and being like, open your newspaper to page 68. Now look below the XXX, sex worker ad. No, keep going. Keep going. Yes, look at the psychology study ad, Eleanor.
Okay, but she's also not like, oh, who are you and how did you get my name? Like none of that.
I'm a haunted house, and I have a very particular set of skills.
She's just like, oh, I'm gonna go on an adventure with this strange person who's called me up out of nowhere.
Which you could argue, okay, this is out of desperation because she's literally like she's about to be homeless, so she has nowhere to go. But at the same time, like we're not really seeing that in this particular. She seems pretty chill actually on the phone when she's talking to the house.
100%. I mean, we're definitely talking about the $900, and we as an audience know, ooh, this seems a bit too good to be true. But yeah, I mean, the movie also presents her as a bit of a naive dum-dum, but then it doesn't follow through that thread line either, right? Like when she gets to the house, she wants to talk about how she's finally embarking on her grand adventure, but that's not naive. That's not sheltered or innocent. That's just a woman saying, cool, I can finally live.
Yeah, my mom's dead. Woohoo.
Exactly.
I've been responsible for my entire world without a second to myself. Now I have a second to myself, and look at me now. It's one of the few scenes that actually kind of works.
Yeah. I mean, the movie needed more of this kind of stuff for this character, but like a lot more.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So then we cut to Mary, who is played by Alex Karamze. I probably mispronounced that. I like this actress. I wish that she was in this film more.
Yeah, because doesn't he tell them to come back? We'll wait until she gets out of this movie. Yes, yeah. I agree. Like both her and Todd Field should have been in this movie more, but whatever.
100%, because then we could have killed people.
We could have killed them.
Yeah, then we'd be cooking, you know? I mean,
right? So Mary has selected people for Dr. David Marrow, who is Liam Neeson's character. And, you know, we're dropping a bunch of absolute... I'm going to assume this is bullshit. I didn't look it up, but I don't think the Kiersey temperament sorter is an actual scale.
I don't know enough to say yes or no to that.
Well, if it is, I apologize, but it sounds bullshit.
I was going to say
this as fuck.
This sounds like a lot of made up bullshit that he's pretending to study.
This makes that parapsychologist in The Initiation look like he's, you know, developing the Kinsey scale. This is right. Utter bullshit on a monumental scale.
Kiersey temperament scale is a real thing.
Okay, fine.
I'm just
My
saving
apologies
you.
to the Kiersey Foundation then. This is giving a whiff of, you know, Heretic Exorcist 2 nonsense.
Yeah. And it's also establishing him as an asshat right off the bat. Because I was going to say, is there an ethical issue with what he's doing by presenting this as one?
Yes.
Absolutely.
But okay, I'm sure there have been famous, like, experiments that have... It's almost like the placebo effect where you think you're getting something, but this is a complete misrepresentation of the study they're doing. And his goal is to also traumatize these people.
Yeah, he has brought them there so he can terrorize them.
Yeah.
And then watch how they react to it.
Which, honestly, I think that's a missed opportunity because all he does is he starts like the rumor, you know, about the story, and he's like, you know, waiting for them to spread the tales and get more scared.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of think he should be like having like traps set up in this house to like actually scare them.
Well, but then Trace, you'd be asking for the movie to have a villain.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, yeah, I think it would have been pretty good and, you know, add a little bit of much needed tension if he was doing some shit to kind of gaslight Eleanor a little bit. Like, you know, if that had been him that painted the welcome home Eleanor on the wall.
Yes.
And, you know, and then like something else happens and he's like, well, that was me, but this wasn't me.
Okay, but y'all know what movie we're just talking about now. Is
House on Haunted Hill 99.
You know,
I'm telling
honestly,
you.
I would have never thought to compare the two, that House on Haunted Hill would have been the better movie because I had a lot of problems with that too, but you know what?
Sure.
It turns out to be the better film.
Yeah, I think without question it's a better movie than this one.
It knows it's a B movie, and it does everything in its power to be the best B movie possible.
It's trying to be goofy as hell.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this is trying to be an A movie, and it fails utterly.
Yeah.
Well, and House on Haunted Hill has two really great campy lead performances, and then we've got a bunch of like kind of watered down duds that we kill off.
Well, also though, because Liam Neeson isn't like particularly charismatic in this role.
No. And sorry, Trace, just to clarify, I was agreeing with you that I think it would have been a smarter choice to have made him more nefarious.
Oh, yeah.
It's just that as we talked about, Steven Spielberg wouldn't allow for any of these characters to be flawed or interesting. They have to be heroes.
That's disappointing. I mean, I say, you make him, more shifty and untrustworthy, and then you have him get his head knocked off by the chimney.
Right.
That's honestly, he should be the one that gets his head bit off. Like, absolutely.
Nailed it in one, Radcliffe. Once again.
Well, because we then could have killed Luke when he tries to crash the car into the gate. So we still could have had that death.
Yes.
Yeah, have some stakes. Put some dramatic stakes here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because one of my early complaints for this film is that, we're embarking under the auspices of conducting this experiment. And I think, okay, give me a little bit of Legend of Hell House where we actually get to see some of the experiment. And the closest we get is Lili Taylor fucking filling out adult coloring book. Nonsense.
Again, perfect. Because comparing this yet again to another movie, Legend of Hell House, so much better.
So much better.
The characters are so well drawn, and you have this excellent flawed protagonist at the center of it, who his personal demons are driving all the other demons in the house, and it just has an engine to it that this film sadly lacks.
Heighten the tension by the fact that they can't escape this house, and they can't trust each other either.
Yeah, because we don't really push the paranoia all that far either.
Not at all.
No.
Like, you get one scene where they argue about each other with, well, maybe it was you, or maybe you did it, and then all of a sudden that's like forgotten in the next scene.
Well, it's also like, so it's like, I think at the halfway point of the film, and it never carries over into the back half.
No. Okay, so we're still getting Nell to the house. We've got a bunch of dissolves, beautiful scenery. We're introduced to the two caretakers. So there's Mr. Dudley, who is played by Laura's dad, Bruce Dern, and he's curmudgeon-y and very combative when she wants to be let into the locked gate. And then we've got Mrs. Dudley, who is played by Marion Seldes, and she's fantastic. I will say, I think there's a lot that doesn't work about this movie, but watching Nell mimic Mrs. Dudley when she's doing her, we locked the gates, no one lives around here, there will be no help, and then Nell just mimics that when Theo comes in.
Which,
Very
In the Dark and the Night is like a very, that's from every adaptation of this story is In the Dark and the Night. I forgot to mention too, Jerry Goldsmith does the score for this movie. What do we find this score memorable?
I think it hampers the entire proceedings. It's so over the top and grandiose. It is once again aiming for that Jurassic Park of haunted house movies. When this really needs some sort of subtle layering and build. But the second anything spooky happens, the orchestra is having multiple orgasms via violin. It doesn't help.
Yeah, so in between meeting the two caretakers, we're also exploring this house. And as Patrick has alluded to, the sets are ginormous. And I do remember when I went to see this in 99, I would have been 17. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, the sets are really selling me on just how ornate, how grandiose this is. This is going to be properly epic. So I do think that the sets are accomplishing what they're meant to do. But also, you realize in hindsight that it's really distracting from any kind of human element in the film, because you're just constantly thinking, oh, everybody looks so tiny, which makes all of the drama tiny.
Yes, exactly.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it's also a thing, and not that a studio would ever release a movie like this in black and white, but I think it also makes you appreciate the black and white 63 version a lot more, because there's just everything's so busy. I do agree. The production design, the set design, it looks amazing, but it's also so busy in a way that I think hampers it.
They have to pour so much light into it. It's like the manor is built next to Giant Stadium.
Yeah.
So when you have to light 3 stories worth of set, there are no dark corners. And no matter how weirdly you color time it, it never creates shadow. There's never an unknown. You see everything.
I will say that's something that I think de Bont said in an interview. So like specifically with the cherub faces on the walls, where he wanted it to be more of a thing where you wouldn't actually see them moving. So it was like you would think maybe they move, but you weren't 100% sure. And that was very much lost when they were like, no, we're going to CGI these things and make them move.
Yeah.
If they had changed the direction of their face or their facial expressions when someone passed by them
between shots or something, yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it kind of works once when we're in Eleanor's bedroom and, they're normal and then something happens and then we go back to them and they're all kind of like looking a little bit slack-jawed into the side.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they also kind of just look like weird glory holes everywhere.
No, but you're right, Joe. No, because we do that. We do that the first time we really focus in on the things above her fireplace, I think, in her room. Yeah. But then after that scene, it's pretty much, no, these things are moving in full CGI force, screaming at Eleanor.
Yeah. But I'll agree, as much as I think the sets look really impressive, they're just also so fucking busy. Like, everything looks threatening or something weird is happening on every part of the set, which means, it's either completely dulled down because you've seen it once and then you've seen it 50 times by the end of the film, or there's no respite. So your eye is just constantly looking at things, but not in that, Easter eggy kind of way. It's just almost an eyesore. Like, it's too busy. It's over decorated.
Well, here's the thing. In the book, Trace, you said you haven't read the book. Joe, have you read it?
I've no.
What kind of excuse were you trying to think up?
It was one of those things where I know so much about it. I feel like I've read it, but I've never actually read it.
Okay, so what makes the house so unsettling, I should say, to the people that enter it is there's just something not right about it. Yes. Like, it's not built correctly. Like, the walls don't kind of join in a way they're supposed to. Everything is just a little off kilter.
Right.
So it's something you notice with your mind's eye, not overtly, but it's enough to make you uncomfortable. And here it's just like, well, here's some screaming children's wood carvings in your room. Here's some bedposts that look like tentacles.
Yes.
Here's the amazed amount of books in a room filled with water. And it's like, none of this is making me feel uncomfortable. This is like, what the hell is happening here? Why does this look more like Alice in Wonderland?
Right. Yeah, if you had told me that Tim Burton had directed this, I would believe certain touches feel like what we do get in, Sleepy Hollow and Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, and I mean, the Amityville Horror isn't a perfect movie. No. But I feel like what works is there's just something wrong with the house. Like, at first blush, it just seems like, it's a nice house, but, it's got those funky windows that look like eyes staring down at you. But it's not overt. It's subtle. There's nothing subtle about this house.
The one thing Amityville has going for it that this cannot is that the Amityville Horror House is a trap. It's too good to be true. How can you get this much house for this little money, and then suddenly they can't even afford that little money? They are in a sinkhole financially, and it's a great financial metaphor for owning the house, something almost everyone at the time could understand, even if they didn't own a house. They knew the financial pitfalls of it. This movie has some of its origins in terms of this adaptation within the Winchester house, which people have been trying to make a movie into for so long. They finally did it, and it flopped.
With Helen Mirren, no less.
Yes, collecting a paycheck. We love a goddess who earns a mortgage paid. But there are all these things that are origin stories for what they want to do here, but they don't quite hit it. And the one that really strikes me is mentioned in King's Dance Macabre, and that's Anne River Siddon's The House Next Door. The problem with The House Next Door is that it's built on an evil rock. And it's unnatural. No house is meant to be there. No humans should be there. And every family that moves in gets twisted by the location. And in here, we're not given any of that. The house is bad, I guess, but it all comes down to this one guy murdering local children. He's turned into a Freddy Krueger. That's fine, but how did he fucking haunt that house?
But that's the thing, is like, yeah, because the house isn't bad. It's the ghost of Hugh Crain, but who also can control the house, I think.
Mm-hmm. It's so nebulous. It doesn't make any sense.
And again, that guts the story, because the story is, it is the house that's bad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, the house itself is cursed. It has ruined everyone and every single person that has ever entered its door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we don't have an origin point for it. And the only reason we know it's super haunted is because the main guy is still hanging around and he's trapped a bunch of ghost children there.
Yeah.
Ghost children!
Ghost children!
Yeah, and I think in hindsight, we're supposed to look at this and say, oh, a bunch of that was never meant to be scary because it's ghost children and they were helping Eleanor, but also not interesting, not making for a good movie.
Oh my god, the ghost child gave her Princess Leia's hairdo. That's terrifying.
Oh my God, Gena, it's the worst.
I mean, I think Theo says it best when she arrives in her cherry red convertible when she says it's Charles Foster Kane meets the Munsters. It's like, okay, the Munsters is probably a little bit strong, but this does feel closer to Charles Foster Kane than, you know, any of the scary things that we've just mentioned.
But in terms of haunted houses, I'm more creeped out by the haunted mansion at Disneyland than I am by this. It has a stronger through line.
Mm-hmm.
It tells me why there's ghosts there. This is I hope you'll find this all scary in the end, sort of filmmaking, storytelling.
Yeah.
This week's episode is sponsored by Wellgo USA's new psychological horror, The Beast Within, in theaters everywhere on July 26th. After strange events make her question her family's isolated life on a fortified compound deep in the English wilds, 10-year-old Willow secretly follows her parents on one of their secret late-night treks into an ancient forest. Witnessing her father's terrifying transformation, she becomes ensnared by the dark ancestral secret they've been desperately hiding. Starring Kit Harington from Game of Thrones, and directed by Alexander J. Farrell, get ready to unleash the untamed in The Beast Within, in theaters everywhere on July 26th.
Okay, well, why don't we talk about Catherine Zeta-Jones, because at least we might have something positive to say about that. So we've mentioned how the film doesn't seem to want to commit to her bisexuality. We do get a very literal, explicit acknowledgement of it. Yes, if we want to look at this as titillation, if we want to see this as pandering to a primarily male audience, we can. But technically, Theo is bisexual in this film. She admits that she has a boyfriend and a girlfriend.
Yeah, truthfully, this is something I actually forgot. I thought they completely wiped this out of the film. But yeah, because we don't do anything with it. And we can talk about it more in the moments when she interacts with Nell and when she's like kissing her and stuff. But like it feels more motherly than romantic in this film, which is it neuters any kind of eroticism to the relationship between them.
Yeah, because she immediately comes off as, well, we're going to be BFFs. You know, whereas, you know, in earlier versions, it's like, well, we might end up sleeping together at some point. You know?
Right.
It's like, I'm definitely going to hit on you at some point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When we talked about the original film, we definitely read Nell as closeted queer. Like how she identified, we don't know, but she seemed to have an interest in Theo and particularly her physical affections. And here there's this moment where the two women are checking out each other's rooms and Theo changes clothes because Catherine Zeta-Jones changes her clothes in pretty much every scene in this film.
But I mean, you had to admit she has a fantastic wardrobe.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, Catherine Zeta-Jones is stunningly gorgeous, and she's dressed like a supermodel in this movie.
I'd say I like Catherine Zeta-Jones in this movie a lot, but I feel like the character is just Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Yes.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I would agree with you. It definitely seems meant to be played by her.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you told me this was the same character from Entrapment, I probably would believe you.
At least in an Entrapment, like, she does have a specific character with a specific purpose. Now, it's all fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a drive to that character. And in here, why is she there? Well, why are any of them there? Because they don't sleep. And then one of them, an entire ghost house, made a phone call It's just terrible. Damn it.
Yeah.
It's not good. Catherine Zeta-Jones is gorgeous in this, though.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But in this moment, it's interesting because I do think that this is the closest we get to acknowledging there could be something. Like, it feels as though an early draft and then we just lost everything that comes after it, because Nell is looking at, like, basically Nell checks out her rack when Theo changes.
Yes, no, we get it's a full frame tit shot of Catherine Zeta-Jones' cleavage. but it's meant to be like we're in Nell's gaze. So like this feels very intentional. But then it's just dropped after this.
Yeah, and Theo seems to acknowledge it, which is why she then says, do you have anybody? Do you have, a husband? Do you have a boyfriend, a girlfriend? And then she comes and she picks something off of Nell's shirt, and Nell full-fledged recoils from this as though she can't stand to be touched by a woman. And I think we could read this as she maybe hasn't been intimate with anybody since her mom passed, or maybe even long before that.
I'm getting the impression she's never been intimate with anybody.
Yeah, but I could see someone easily reading this as gay panic.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, no,
or even
totally.
like, I don't know if I like this and I don't want to explore it. And it's another one of those things where you think, that could be a character choice. We could do something with that. And we don't do anything with it.
Nope.
Like, my queer reading for this film is this fucking scene.
Yeah, that's it.
And then it just ends.
I think you could, and we can talk about it more when we get to like the climax of the film. I think you could argue maybe it's kind of there in Theo.
Right.
Because it's like, why the fuck does she care about Eleanor so much? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, why does she care?
I mean, I get the impression that she is fascinated by her because she's so obviously sheltered.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, because that's why I think when she's like at the dinner table later, when she's like, oh, sex, I feel like she's saying that mostly for Nell.
Trying to be provocative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's trying to feel her out because she didn't know anyone who's like Nell. No one in that room has met a ton of Nells because you don't meet Nell in general. She's trapped with her mother and her failing health. She has been in that small apartment for that long, and she just doesn't experience the world.
Well, yeah, and Theo has a whirlwind romance with her boyfriend and girlfriend, but they both hate each other, so she's got to get her entertainment somewhere.
Exactly.
Right.
She loves to cause the drama.
But I think it does illustrate another problem that this movie ultimately has, which is that everybody acts like Nell is special. And this would have made sense if Nell had some kind of latent psychic abilities like she does in the original, or if, she was just more interesting or something. But like when Dr. Marrow shows up, he's so excited to meet Nell because she's the most susceptible, we later discover. But like, same with Theo. Like, why is Theo so engaged with this woman? Is it just because, they've never met someone so sheltered? Like, that's not particularly interesting. But the movie frames everything like, Nell is the chosen one of this film. She's the Mary Sue of everything. And it's just like, but she's also really fucking boring.
She is boring. She kind of like sort of comes off as childish, but also just kind of a stick in the mud. And as someone who has struggled with insomnia at various points of my life, I am not quite sure why that would make me more susceptible to being terrorized by a scientist for whatever it is he is trying to research. I mean, maybe it's because you get to a certain point where you're so strung out on lack of sleep that maybe you start seeing things. That's the only thing I can think of that he has deemed Nell to be especially susceptible to whatever it is he's going to do to her.
Right.
But then he ultimately doesn't do much. And that's the problem with the movie as a whole. Each character doesn't do very much. Things just happen to them because the script says, and now this happens. There are no character-driven moments once they enter the house. And that's a big problem because all but 8 minutes take place inside the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, why don't we talk about this first dinner sequence? So, Trace, you alluded that Theo is trying to feel Nell out. And then, of course, we've also got Dr. Marrow laying out the rules. But this is also where Mary gets, I don't know what musical instrument this is.
Oh, it's a harpsichord.
Is it a harpsichord? Okay.
Miro says it. He says, like, stop playing with the harpsichord, Mary.
Right. Something we're always telling Mary.
Mary,
damn
up
it,
to her
Mary.
business again.
God damn it, Mary.
Stop playing with the harpsichord. Everywhere we go, Mary, it's the goddamn harpsichord.
Everywhere we go, it's the Pirates of the Caribbean.
I'm sorry, really quick. We don't have to like talk about it. I just want to say because we are introduced to the Purgatory Wall art piece, statue, sculpture thing that will play a big part in the finale. But I really hate Nell's line of, "Well, I studied Purgatory. I was there once for 11 years."
That line falls about as stiff as that fucking door looks.
I think it cuts immediately after. It's like it's waiting for a reaction, then we cut later. But yeah, anyway, so dinner time.
No, I mean, here's the thing. We can bounce around a fuck ton because at the end of the day, it's all rinse, lather, repeat throughout most of this film. So I love to talk about the Purgatory door because it's one of the many doors that looks like it should weigh about 2 tons and people just push it open like it's made of sandpaper.
It's so fucking huge. Every door around there is so gigantic.
Yeah.
It's grandeur, but then it never really is able to harness that grandeur for a lot of meaning. It's a lot of missed opportunity.
Honestly, they should have used more crane shots in this house. They have the space for it.
True.
Yeah.
It is rather tightly shot.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
In a way that Speed is. Like, Speed has a lot of masters and tight close-ups on people to convey tension. And in here, it's like de Bont has forgotten everything he's ever learned. He just goes into trying to make sure that every shot shows as much of that house. And believe me, it looks great, but it's all for naught in my mind.
I feel like another movie we have not brought up that has similar themes and does it much better is The Shining.
Right.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Shelley Duvall, moment of silence. But because you've got that great shot of Wendy and Danny in the hedge maze, and it's an overhead shot, and they look so tiny.
Yeah.
Right.
And that single shot just puts across you. Oh, they are trapped here.
So what we should have had was a shot where we do like an overhead shot of the house, but we like remove the roof just to see like all the hallways.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'll admit, like, when we see Nell running down the hallways after that one nightmare sequence, or even at the end of the film where everybody has sort of scattered, it still kind of feels like there's only like 2 hallways and then that flooded book hallway. We've seen the exterior shots and this place looks ginormous, but at the end of the day, it feels like there's just really 2 or 3 big cavernous rooms at a couple of hallways.
Oh yeah, it's we're running through, and that's again whenever Hugh Crain is chasing her, whatever, at the end, and then we just have like the roof kind of like collapsing behind her, and I was like, okay, but why is the ghost chasing her? Can't it just like be there? Like, can't it just be there?
I mean, why can't it just pull a poltergeist house and just collapse in on itself?
Right, well, because I think Hugh Crain likes the house too much. I got to destroy the house.
But the house is like bubblegum. It breathes, it morphs,
He can just reinflate it.
Yeah, collapse in on her, crush her or whatever, and then reshape itself. I mean, it sounds stupid as hell, but so does it. So is this movie.
But that's like, okay, so like when she sees her second or maybe third sheet ghost in the curtains,
yeah,
and it's like, it's when the ghost goes through her, which I think is maybe the most sexual moment in this film.
She looks like she's orgasming, but it's meant to be a ghost child.
Yeah, but the ghost child is like, he's coming, and
I'm
it's like
coming.
But it's also like, he is the house. Why isn't he just here? Like, how does
He's
he not
just here
know,
all the time.
How does he know everything that's going on in this house?
Yeah,
it's the difference. It's weird that this comes out after The Frighteners, because The Frighteners kind of pulls this sort of rug out from underneath the audience, where here's a person who clears ghosts from houses, but he takes the ghost to the house to pull hijinks, and then comes up against the ghost that, while it's kind of haunting a particular house, is doing it for fun to like get his girlfriend hot. And he's kind of stuck up against the wall unless he does something really pronounced. And then he's dangerous outside of being on the wall of a house. And yet this movie just really believes that if you move parts of a house, it's scary every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And it just runs out of ways to do that about a third of the way in. It's like she beats away an iron griffin with the leg of a fucking chair. And then it's like,
God.
I've had enough. Why? You don't have nerve endings, motherfucker.
Okay, the Griffin statue coming, I think that's the worst.
Terrible.
It's really bad. Like, it's not threatening at all, and it doesn't look good.
Here's the thing. If that had been occurring in another 1999 film like The Mummy, we would have all been completely fine with it because that fits within that world.
Yeah.
In this film, it feels like, what the fuck are we doing? Why hasn't this happened before and why doesn't it happen again? It's so out of place.
And why isn't it just killing her? I mean, Hugh Crain gets so pissed that Luke defaces a portrait of himself that he decapitates him immediately. So we know this is something he just can do, unless it's supposed to be like, oh, because it's his great-great-granddaughter, there's a
Well, she's not scared of him at that point, Trish,
Oh,
so he
right.
can't hurt her.
God.
he
He's
feeds
Freddy
off of
Krueger.
fear. He's
Oh
Freddy
my
Krueger.
God.
Yeah.
I forgot about that twist and like the noise that came out of me when she's like, I'm his great-great-granddaughter. I'm just,
God.
and then
It's a wet fart.
and then she pulls that, that she has to help now because it's about family, and I'm just like,
Okay, but so here's because she discovers all of that like between scenes or something, because when she tells everyone else about it, she's telling the audience like, we do not know this. And
No, because at this point we've tried to escape from the house. Luke has crashed into the gate. We brought them back into the house because we realize Eleanor is not with us anymore. And then we discover her in the nursery and she's just like, exposition dump. By the way, it's all about family. I need to stay here. This is my house now. Goodbye.
And she cares so much about these kids. Oh my God. When she first finds the secret room following the bloody footprints, and
Yes.
this is when we learn, okay, so this is when it's very clear, okay, hey, like these kids were child laborers. And
Okay.
whatever. But okay,
Sure.
there's so many books and logs in there that probably could give them a lot more information, and we just were done with it there. So she doesn't, like, no one else goes into this room to look at it, to corroborate Eleanor's story. Like, it's why? It's only here for the scene so she can look at one logbook when there's hundreds of them around her.
Mm-hmm.
Which just happens to be alpha. That scene typifies almost everything wrong with this particular movie. She follows this trail of bloodstained footprints, which of course disappear. Fine, I don't care. But there's no build to it. There's no danger at any point. The mystery is kind of taken away because she doesn't have to look for anything. It just leads her right to the one piece of information she needs. Like she's the hound dog in Lady and the Tramp using Old Reliable for clues.
I will say there is because Scary Movie 2 does a lot of gags from this movie.
Right.
And there's one particular one that I always love. It's whenever the ghost is talking to Cindy, it's like, the music room, the music. She's like, where are you? I can check the fucking music room.
Well, okay, so obviously we're coming down pretty hard on this film. Can we talk about a sequence? I don't think it's entirely successful, but I do think it's one of the better action sequences, which is the one Gena has alluded to, which is when Nell gets imprisoned by the bed.
Mm-hmm. I know we joked about the eyes earlier, but I actually do like the way this looks.
Mm-hmm.
I would like it if it was the only time it happened.
Fair.
I think as far as on a special effects level, it's okay, but I'm distracted by how awful Lili Taylor is in this scene. Like, I don't buy for a second that she feels like she's in mortal danger.
The timing's all off because she has to scream for 3 solid minutes without taking a breath somehow.
Well, it's also because this is also a point where everyone else still thinks she's the crazy one. Like, they don't believe that this house is haunted. And they finally bust in and they're kind of like, huh.
I guess she didn't do this herself.
She didn't Kool-Aid man her way through several walls while being pinned to a bed by tentacle monsters.
I love that what convinces Liam Neeson is getting drowned in a koi pond by this giant fucking statue.
Okay, so again, I think in concept, like when it starts vomiting, okay, so everyone, if you haven't seen this movie, like there's this giant statue in a koi pond that's a human face, and it just grabs him in this CGI effect and drowns him. But then the statue starts vomiting blood. And I think it looks cool, but then I'm also like, why aren't we just killing him?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, you guys nailed it earlier in that we should have killed off the people who were taking care of the house. The two assistants, or at least one of the assistants comes back. So there's a bit more of a body count, but they're not doing that for fear they're going to get an R. It'll become too much like a slasher movie.
Yeah.
And they can't, for some reason, dream up of bloodless ways to dispatch people in a house that should have a ton of crazy, weird traps.
We do have, I mean, I think there's a moment that I think is kind of creepy whenever Nell first sees the first Mrs. Crane's like hanged body above the spiral staircase. But then they do that thing where like, oh, no one else can see it, so they all think she's crazy, and then she doesn't tell them what she saw. But I think visually, I think it's an evocative image.
Well, okay, let's talk about then the other, what I'm going to say is the other good sequence in this film, which is when Dr. Marrow, Liam Neeson, has to climb up the staircase to get Nell because she has gone up there to investigate the ghost that she saw earlier. And the staircase starts to fall apart under him because I legitimately do think this is the closest we get to a tense moment in this film.
I would agree with you there.
Yeah.
But it's the one thing that Jan de Bont has been known to be able to do, which is take a person in peril and be able to build tension out of mechanics you understand. Gravity. He can only get so far up, and every time he gets farther up, his weight is pulling what he's climbing down. Those are mechanics I can understand. Even a 6-year-old can probably figure it out. It's all the other stuff that he can't quite grasp how to make it meaningful or tension-filled, scary, shocking.
I do think there is one good jump scare in this movie, and I remember it got me when I was a kid, and it didn't get me today, but it's because I remembered it, like, it really stuck in my brain. It's when she's digging through the ashtray of the fireplace and pulls out the skeleton.
Okay.
I think that's pretty good. I think it's fine. I mean, then she runs away and then she's just, running and screaming for the rest of the movie. But I think that's pretty good.
It's fine.
It's a golf clap.
By the way, I'm sorry. I'm going back to the children in the sheet. So I actually have David Self's. No, hear this. So
that's not a search that you did on Pornhub. That's what you're calling a sequence in this movie.
Yeah.
The Children in the Sheets, as read by Trace Thurman.
Screenwriter David Self, and I quote, "Well, Steven Spielberg felt like we needed to deliver the goods for modern audiences. Hence, where once curtains merely billowed, now they ripple with the ghosts of children. Steven and his daughter were playing with this sheet of silk, and it made this impression on her little face. And so Steven, out of the blue, says, 'We need a scene where there's a spirit of a child in the sheets.'"
No, we don't, Steven. No, we don't.
Not the way they do it. Again, to harken back to a reference to The Mummy. The Mummy's effects are not better than what you see in this movie. No. They are more judicious about when they use it. Yeah. And they use it for a very particular effect. Like, they know they can only do 7 minutes worth of hardcore special effects. So when they choose to make a mummy scream at you and his jaw fall off, they're going to make the most out of it.
Right.
And in here, they just paint CGI over anything that they want to in the hopes that that will be scary. Whereas if you had painted a kid's face white and put it underneath the sheets, it probably would have worked better.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of cool when it moves from the curtain to her bed sheet, but it still looks like shit.
Yeah, and it looked like shit in 99 too, to be clear. It's not like, oh, wow, we can look back with rose-colored glasses and say this was cutting-edge technology. It's like 17-year-old me said, oh, that looks like hot garbage.
Well, and that's why I think, so, I did watch, the 28-minute making-of featurette, which is, by the way, narrated by Catherine Zeta-Jones in a Shelley Duvall, fairy tale theater type role. It's wild. But, again, so the scene with the bed, they actually, have the house, bending down to make some eyes. I'm sure it was enhanced by CGI, but they're actually, pieces of architecture that are on like rigs and moving. Like these are real things. But then you have again like the CGI statue arm drowning Liam Neeson. You have actually any big arm, the fucking fist that punches Lili Taylor. Like it all looks so bad.
Very bad. Yeah.
Oh, what about whenever Lili Taylor makes it back into the carousel room, and then she like starts like she gets the teeth of her great grandmother, but then she also like gets pregnant.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that shot where like her tummy grows.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh dear God.
But also, I'm just thinking of the sequence from House on Haunted Hill 99, where we trap Jeffrey Rush in the circular room that drives him mad.
Right. Although, I mean, I think this is the most interesting looking room in the entire place.
Sure, but we don't do anything with it. Like, Gena, you said earlier, the carousel, but we don't even have fucking horses in this room.
No.
It's just a room that goes around.
It's just this rotating room with shrieking calliope music playing.
Which,
why?
Okay, the weirdest choice I thought was that when the end credits start, that's the song that plays.
Yeah.
It's like, remember this? We know you love this room the best.
But it's also like, you're not using Jerry Goldsmith's score, you're using Calliope, and it also is tonally, like, not...
It doesn't work.
Matching the ending of this movie.
No.
No.
It is baffling. I'll confess, I think I also sometimes confuse this film with the Katie Holmes one.
Katie Holmes? Oh, Don't Be Afraid of the Dark.
Don't Be Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah, because isn't that like a big old gothic house where she's like worried about the fucking kids the whole time too?
But there's monsters in that movie, and it's a remake.
Yeah, that is my horror origin story, is the TV movie Don't Be Afraid of the Dark.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it on a 4:30 in the afternoon, and it freaked me out to the point where I never thought I would be able to close my eyes again. So I've never been able to bring myself to watch that remake. But the original scared the living hell out of me.
Oh,
all right.
Joe, guess who the kid is in the remake of Don't Be Afraid of the Dark?
Who is it?
Bailey Madison.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm,
Okay.
mm-hmm.
Pretty Little Liars, Summer School,
Summer,
Origin
whatever.
Sin,
The
whatever,
Strangers
whatever.
too.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Okay, so I've got a couple of bullet points. Like, we've given up on covering this movie, essentially. We're not doing it in order.
Well, as you say, I think one of you said, a bunch of stuff happens and also nothing happens at the same time.
Yeah.
Well, I think we could talk about whatever we want, but then let's actually talk about then like the end, like the climax of the film.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
So, Joe, what's your first bullet point?
Okay, so one of my bullet points is there's this moment where Nell is looking through old photo albums, right? This is when she's starting to piece it together. This is family. She eventually sees the locket that she's wearing that was her mother's and clearly belonged to Carolyn, who was the second wife of Hugh Crain. But as we're flipping through this photo album, we see an old picture of Hugh Crain. My bullet point is this blackface? Because what the fuck is going on with this guy's wrinkled, pruny looking face?
It's like Jacob Marley from like Christmas Carol is like what we're doing here, but I like your interpretation better.
I love that. Like you can't put enough to the audience that this is a bad guy. Mm-hmm. We gotta make it like one of those Halloween decorations you get where like you shift the picture and like it turns into like a skull face.
Right.
But I also like because the whole like the story that they are told is that Hugh Crain was this lovable textile owner who just
everyone thought he was so great and secretly he was killing kids, and you're like, this man with this house, you thought he was an upstanding citizen?
The portrait up at the top of the stairs, he looks fucking evil. Like nothing about this man gives warm, cuddly business tycoon.
There's no mystery to it. Because as soon as you see the guy, you're like, well,
that's an evil man.
It's fucking insane. You can really feel the shifts in the reshoots at various points because they have to drop these little ADR nuggets throughout it.
Mm-hmm.
So Eleanor is trying to convince Theo that this town ledger proves that they were stealing children, and to make the sound of children in the house, stealing kids and offing them when he didn't care for them anymore.
Hundreds of them.
And then Catherine Zeta-Jones is going, this is a leap. I think you're putting too much into this. I think you need to go to sleep. And then finally, there's a completely different Catherine Zeta-Jones voice who goes, go to bed. Like, where did that come from?
Go to the fucking music room.
Go to the fucking music room.
When they're around the table and she mentioned, and Catherine Zeta-Jones goes, sex, there's an ADR
ADR.
from Owen Wilson that he does not say.
No.
It's like they're trying to rescue it by throwing a bunch of stuff at it in the hopes that if there's enough glitter, you won't notice the shit sandwich you're eating. And it doesn't work.
Okay, I've got a bullet point, and it's actually way earlier in the film, but I think the only scene that really tries to recreate something from the original film, and it is the scene where Nell and Theo were on the bed together, and they're hearing the knocking, the rapping, and then, oops, it's just Luke. Like,
yeah. But the door buckles in.
A little bit, yes, but I think I keep going back to the way Robert Weiss shot that original film, where we have all those Dutch angles, and we're doing like a lot of rapid-fire cutting, and this doesn't do that, and then we also get that horrible CGI cold breath.
Oh yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Like you can see Jan de Bont moving the camera around, and he's trying to create almost this omniscient POV of, ooh, something's in there with them. It's mysterious, and I appreciated that, but it's also, I don't know. It felt very pedestrian. Like it's something I would have expected from somebody making their first scary movie.
Okay, we passed that scene when you were going through your actual, like when we were sitting to the plot summary, and we didn't even mention it because it's not memorable.
No, it really isn't.
Here's a scene. Here's something that kind of shows the lack of competence, let's say, in structure and pacing and what they're trying to, whatever kind of tension they're trying to build with the audience. There is a pretty iconic scene in the original movie, and it's directly out of the book, where Theo and Nell are in the same room together. They're actually sleeping.
Who's holding my hand?
Who's holding my hand?
Yes.
They recreate that scene and do not establish beforehand that she thinks someone is holding her hand.
No.
Yeah.
Like it works because there is another. Theo is in there with her, but Theo is not holding her hand.
Yeah.
And here she just kind of falls out of bed and says, "Who was holding my hand?"
Okay, wait. Yeah. Like, I literally wrote in my notes, this is my bullet point. This is the recreation of the "who was holding my hand" scene, but Theo isn't there, so it doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, and there's no precedent for it, so it's just, she gets tossed, and then she haphazardly says, "Who was holding my hand?" And then we just move on.
It's like they wanted to separate, because they had to for legal reasons. That they wanted to be very certain that this is not a remake of the movie, of the original movie, and yet they dropped these clumsy Easter eggs.
For whom? I don't know.
Well, but it's also because Lili Taylor is stuck narrating things for the audience by just saying things out loud. Like, honestly, one of the biggest, like, most egregious examples for this is whenever right before she gets the door, punches her, which, okay,
terrible.
But
when you put it that way, it sounds stupid.
Yeah, but no, but right before she's trying to open this door, and then there's a smell, and she goes, "Oh, what's that smell?" And I'm like, "Bitch." Who are you saying this to?
Oh my god. I mean, we have obviously talked about how badly she is done by this film, but I think the only line of dialogue she has in the entire back half of the film, like if she doesn't say the word child in her line of dialogue, it's like she's not getting paid.
No.
Oh, no, I think her absolute worst line of dialogue comes in the climax, so I will save it for when we actually talk about it.
I've already said what mine is.
Well, how about this? Before we talk about the ending, let's talk about Luke's death, because it was the only part of the film that worked for me back in 99.
I was going to say it's the only good part of the movie.
And not because it's like, I want to see Luke Wilson get decapitated, because it's a legitimately like, oh, fuck.
Finally, we're cooking.
Yeah.
And it's like the last 15 minutes of the movie.
But then it doesn't build after that. Like, because it's just fucking CGI Hugh Crain ghost, like, yelling at Nell.
Yeah. But I do want to say, like, we talked about the monstrosity of these sets. I love the Chekhov's lion-headed flu that we introduced earlier on in the near miss, and Luke being like, whew, imagine if it had gotten me. Like, I do think that we've actually structured that well, and it pays off in a satisfying way, because the build up to, okay, we're getting shit stuck in the windows trying to break them, and then he defaces that portrait, and then we take a magic carpet ride, decapitation.
Well, it's because okay, so the close-up shot we get of the portrait that's been defaced too, it's very Beauty and the Beast, the Disney one, when we have like the clawed portrait of the prince. But I like the way this is done. The rug pulling him. I love the explosion of ash and bones after he gets decapitated, and the decapitation itself, as quick as it is strikingly effective.
Yeah,
but why does he go over and start defacing the picture when up until this point he's like, I don't know, I think this is all BS.
Right.
Suddenly there's stuff I can't explain. You know what will solve this problem? I'm going to take a candlestick to that painting. How did you square that fucking circle?
Hey, I'm just going to say, though, when they're out there by the gate trying to like break it down and it's not going, climb the fucking fence and walk the 9 miles back to town. Like, that is not difficult. You can climb that fucking fence. There's not barbed wire at the top. There are, like, it does kind of curve in, but like, it's not impenetrable.
It's not the Hell Knight level of intimidating gate.
No.
The only good part of that gate sequence is when part of it falls off and nearly stabs him in the top of the head.
Which again, we should have
done. If it had,
could have done
would have been awesome.
You know what? You bring back Todd Fields' character. Yes. You say, "Oh, he's back," and you see like his car. Why isn't he coming in?
And they immediately die.
And then they go out there and check. He's got the fucking spikes through his head.
Yeah,
right.
Why not do that?
Okay, so the logic in this movie we've already said is like there's not a lot of logic. How about right after Luke's death, they're all freaking out and they're like, "Oh my God, Luke!" And Nell's idea is, well, Crain used to play hide and seek with the kids, so we have to hide.
Oh my God! She pulls this shit out of the air,
nowhere.
Just like, I'm related to them. Well, now it's up to me to escort the children to, the children's souls to heaven.
The children's souls department.
Wait until the daytime when the house seemingly has no power.
Yeah,
it just. Yeah, it's so frustrating. So now my question for you folks, if we had to establish some rules about what the house can and can't do, or what Hugh Crane's ghost can and can't do you think we could have sold some of this finale a little bit better? Like if we had said, okay, we're doing some research in the nursery and we discover that Hugh Crain is afraid of daylight, or he's, super afraid of family and he won't invite anybody for Christmas. Like, we can use that. Would it go down better?
I mean, I don't know if it would go down better, but I feel like at least giving some characterization to Hugh Crain would do something.
Yeah. Okay. Because, I mean, I hate the Rorschach ghost thing at the end of House on Haunted Hill 99. I think it looks bad. It doesn't work well. But I'm still going to say it works better than this fucking Hugh Crain thing that we're dealing, because at least there we know that it'll gobble you up and it'll turn your face into somebody's distorted voice and so on. Here it's just like, okay, we need to lure Hugh Crane's ghost to the purgatory door, and oopsie Nell just gets caught and becomes collateral damage.
But why do you have to lure him? Isn't he the spirit of the house?
But his spirit comes out of the portrait that was knocked down and scratched Catherine Zeta-Jones earlier. So it's like, okay, well,
why not say he's trapped in the portrait and the house is like partially responding to him or something?
Yeah, sure.
And it's like, when the portrait falls off the wall, then that's Hugh Crane's ability to now come out. He's not locked in the picture anymore. Or some fucking, just anything. Give me anything.
I mean, it wouldn't make this better, but it would explain something that I don't care about.
I feel like the ending would have been much more poignant if we got the impression that Nell very much wanted to die.
Yeah.
Right.
But I did not get that impression. So, why she's like, finally, my soul's at peace. She ascends to heaven with these ghost children.
Okay, but before this happens, we have to have Lili Taylor give, like, a mini speech to Hugh Grant's
God.
ghost that is just staring at her and letting her speak for some ungodly reason.
Because she's not scared of it, Trace. She's not scared of it.
She first says, the children need me and I'm going to set them free, which is, I think, supposed to be like a rousing, like, yeah, Eleanor,
Sure.
get her. But my least favorite line that she has to give, well, I'm family, Grandpa, and I've come home.
Oh my god, yeah, there's that, and it's about family. And it's like, whose family? Like, the children are not your family.
Jesus Christ. And then Vin Diesel Kool-Aid Man's through the wall with Coronas for everybody.
Like, is that supposed to be inspiring? Or are we supposed to be like, yeah, Nell, you sacrifice yourself for these ghost children?
But it's because she's their surrogate mother. Again, her life is fulfilled because she now has a family of 100 bastards.
Oh my god!
Which again,
God.
Freddy Kruegerville,
because
Patrick.
she was born into a life of service, and she's gonna die in a life of service.
Yeah, but the movie wants to treat it like a good thing.
This is a good thing. This is what she died. She died as she lived.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's like depressing, but not depressing in the way that the original book and movie end. Which
No.
But there's like there's a dissonance there though, because again the film treats this as heroic and we should be happy about this.
Yeah, but then even in the final moments, right? Okay, so everything is done. Nell is dead. We walk out to the gate and the Dudleys come in, and then the movie just ends with Theo and Dr. Merrill walking out like, how am I supposed to feel? Because moments ago you wanted it to be like an uplifting thing, but this is telling me like, oh, it's so sad.
no, but the last line is the Dudleys making a crack about city people, and it's like,
This is not a city people problem.
But wait, I'm sorry. On the note of CGI though, the image of Nell's ghost like rising to heaven with these ghost children swirling around her, and she's so like, what is this? Like, just kill her. And, like,
No, we have to know that she ascended to heaven, Trace.
and
Come
she's
on.
and her soul's at peace.
But was it a plan? Was her plan, I'm going to stand in front of this ghost and then he's going to get trapped in the purgatory door?
well, okay, because she dies by getting knocked into the. So she gets like Gwen Stacy with this purgatory door.
Yeah,
Is basically what
right,
happens.
yeah.
But he gets in the door, but then like a skeleton that's on the door grabs him and pulls him in. So,
Is the door not attached to the house? I thought he could control the fucking house.
but so this door is actually purgatory.
Maybe.
But also, let's take this back to the reveal that it was the house that called her and told her to look in the newspaper. So was that supposed to be
The children, I think.
Oh my God.
The children mimicked?
Well, because why would the house want her back?
I was gonna say, why would Hugh Crain be calling her to the house?
Yeah,
Exactly. I think I just had an aneurysm or a stroke.
like
Because what the fuck?
A strokerism.
to be okay. So I'm sorry. So the way Hugh Crain is defeated is that he flies into Eleanor to kill her, but inadvertently flies right into this purgatory door where he is trapped
Yes.
forever.
Yes. Correct.
Because of door.
Because of convenience.
Because someone saw The Devil's Advocate and was like, I like that painting thing, so let's do that with the door.
But, he really shouldn't have, added a door to purgatory as part of his house
Right?
plan.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like, don't you think he should, of all people, should know? Oh, I should probably like stay away from that door a little
I
bit.
should probably have boarded that door up a long time ago.
Let me tackle her from the side, and not. He was enraged. He was so angry. He just couldn't help himself.
God, I love that we are trying to logic retcon this movie as though anybody gave it any effort.
I need to go back to this. Eleanor was called to the house. Like, who called her?
I think it was the kids.
And did they like instinctively know? Well, your mom died. She's not doing anything now.
Mm-hmm.
They've been waiting this entire
Did
time.
they see the mother's obituary and say that was the time?
They had to know about the advertisement in the newspaper too. But okay, at least we know they can use phones because the ghost children are in the spirits of the cherub carving things, and they have hands. So theoretically,
God,
one of them could
stop.
grab a phone.
Oh my God,
Do we ever see a phone in the house? There's no phones. They established there's no phones.
That is
and
true.
that only Liam Neeson has a cell phone.
Fuck. Fuck!
How the fuck are they calling?
They have fucked this movie up 12 ways to Sunday, and we just verified it. Like, think of how much leaps of logic we just had to do just to get Eleanor to the fucking house.
When in the original, all she did was see the ad in the paper and says, "That sounds interesting. I think I'll call because I don't have anything better to do right now."
Yeah.
Exactly. Why not just have her be like, you know what? Sure, I have insomnia because of my mom, and I'd like my first grand adventure.
Yeah, she holds onto the necklace and gets a feeling when she sees the ad and makes the call. That would be perfectly acceptable. But to wrangle this is that ghost children are imitating this Irish man and his semi-American accent to get her to come over to the house.
6'5" Irishman.
As you are apt to do.
Hello? Yes, is this Eleanor?
My daughter's been taken. I hate it. I don't want to talk about this anymore.
You just hear you just hear children giggling in the back. No, hang up.
No, you hang up and then call her again. Eleanor, is your fridge running?
They called her in the daytime when they shouldn't be able to do that too.
Oh my god.
I can't do this anymore.
All right, that covers it. The Haunting, 1999, 9 out of 10, 15 stars. Joe Bob says check it out.
Okay,
Yes,
everyone.
definitely cherub blowjobs, and we're good to go.
No, Eleanor, where are you?
Eleanor, I'm coming.
Where are you?
I'm coming, Eleanor.
Okay, that is The Haunting. Does anyone have final thoughts on this?
No, all the thoughts are out.
Oh my god. Okay.
Actually, you know what? I do. I have one more. One more just absolute proof that this movie cannot even score a touchdown with the simplest of things. So, Trace, you cut me off because I wasn't done when we were talking about the staircase sequence. Okay, so we have the staircase that falls. Liam Neeson goes up, we rescue Eleanor, and they just walk to the other end of the catwalk, and then they're magically safe. How the fuck do they get down, and why did he have to go up there in the first place? Okay, I'm done. Now we can wrap it up.
Well, so that's when we first stopped doing the plot, is during that scene, I think.
Yeah, we were driven insane, and then we just became rage machines.
A house called me on my cell phone, and I freaked out a little bit.
God.
It literally said Hill House. What might be Hill House? Is that what they do?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, well, before we announce who we're covering next week, Patrick and Gena, let everyone know for the 5th time, where can they find you and your podcast on social media?
Oh, sure. You can find us on most places with the exception of Twitter at Kill by Kill Pod. We have a Patreon. We have over 340 episodes out there right now. They're all pretty fun. We talk about horror movie characters in the order in which they die. And we never would have covered The Haunting because only one person bites it in the whole fucking thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, if you want to get in touch, I'm exhausted.
Yeah, this is
We haven't had a rage bait like a ragey episode like this in a while.
It's cathartic and yet painful.
Just sitting in the middle of a bowling alley with a bloody pin in our hands saying I'm done.
Well, if you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Twitter and Instagram at HorrorQueers. Shoot us an email at horrorqueers@gmail.com. Find us on Letterboxd to keep track of all the films we've covered. Chat with other listeners in our Facebook Horror Queers group. If you have a moment, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you want even more content, please support the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers. Subscribing today will get you 320 hours of Patreon content, including this month's new episodes on Hannibal Season 1, Episode 7, A Quiet Place Day 1, Maxine, Longlegs, and to tie in with Longlegs, we've got a brand new audio commentary on David Fincher's 1995 classic, Seven. Definitely better than The Haunting.
Truly. It knows how to nail a downbeat ending.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah, much better ending.
Joe,
Mm-hmm.
what are we covering next week?
Well, this is going to be interesting, Trace. So we are closing out the month with a new to both of us title.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to finally pull the trigger on someone we've mentioned a couple of times. Alejandro Jodorowsky, and we're going to check out what has been billed as a variation of Psycho in Santa Sangre.
Oh boy. Described as an avant-garde, surrealistic, psychological horror. I don't think I'm prepared for whatever we're in for.
No. But there will be more carnival stuff, so...
Yay!
Hey.
I don't think I've ever seen a Jodorowsky film either, so this will be a first for me in many ways.
Okay.
A softer landing than some for Jodorowsky.
Well. All right, everyone. Well, until next time, we can cross out Jan de Bont's The Haunting.
Indeed. And cross out horror queers. The children, Eleanor. The children.
It's about family.
Where are you?
I hate it.